Summer 1940. Europe had fallen. France had surrendered. The Nazi war machine, undefeated and relentless, loomed over the continent. Cities burned, governments collapsed, and the world seemed to tilt toward darkness. Only one island remained unconquered: Britain. Across the Channel, the Luftwaffe's bombers and fighters prepared to dominate the skies, to crush resistance before the Wehrmacht could set foot on English soil. But Britain was not ready to kneel. The country had endured the Blitzkrieg's march across Europe, yet it still had its navy, its air force, and a spirit hardened by centuries of island isolation. Prime Minister Winston Churchill knew the stakes. "We shall fight on the beaches," he declared, "we shall never surrender." The call was more than rhetoric, it was a declaration that the United Kingdom would stand alone, a solitary bastion against the tide of fascism. The Royal Air Force, outnumbered and outgunned, had one task: hold the skies. Its pilots were few, but their resolve was unbreakable. Every radar station, every anti-aircraft gun, every fighter squadron became a linchpin in a defense that relied on courage, coordination, and sheer willpower. Meanwhile, the Luftwaffe, confident and experienced from campaigns in Poland, Norway, and France, believed that the fall of Britain would be swift, a decisive knockout to secure Europe's skies. As the days grew longer and the Channel shimmered under summer light, the island prepared. Civilians dug shelters, children learned air raid protocols, and the RAF scrambled its planes in constant readiness. Britain would face the storm alone, but alone did not mean defeated. A battle was coming, one that would be fought not on the ground, but in the air, a battle that would decide the fate of a continent. July 1940. The skies above southern England darkened with the approaching storm. Thousands of German aircraft, Messerschmitt Bf 109s and Heinkel He 111s, roared over the Channel, engines like thunder announcing the coming destruction. The Luftwaffe's goal was clear: gain air superiority, destroy the Royal Air Force, and pave the way for Operation Sea Lion, the planned invasion of Britain. Every bomber carried not just bombs, but the expectation of victory. The first waves hit coastal airfields and radar stations. British defences were caught off guard in some sectors, while in others, the early warning system, the chain-home radar network, allowed fighter squadrons to scramble in time. Dogfights erupted over Kent and Sussex, Messerschmitts and Spitfires twisting and diving in a deadly ballet. For every German bomber that pressed toward London, Hurricanes and Spitfires challenged them, often at great cost. Bombs rained down on airfields, factories, and ports, aiming to cripple the RAF before it could mount a proper defense. Yet the British response was resilient. Fighter command sector control rooms coordinated squadrons with precision, guiding pilots like chess pieces in a deadly game. Anti-aircraft guns bristled along the coast, sending shells into the sky to deter bomber formations. Despite heavy losses, the RAF refused to yield. The Luftwaffe adapted. Daytime raids gave way to night attacks. They targeted industrial zones, shipyards, and eventually, London itself. The Blitzkrieg mentality, lightning fast, overwhelming force, met a foe that refused to collapse. Cities became targets, yet civilians endured. Families huddled in basements and subway stations as bombs shook homes, shattered windows, and left streets in ruins. Yet morale remained surprisingly high. Londoners and provincial towns alike carried on with stoic determination, a quiet defiance against the terror raining from above. German intelligence underestimated the RAF's resilience. Pilots, though fewer in number, used speed, agility, and intimate knowledge of home territory to their advantage. Each dogfight, each downed bomber, fueled British confidence. The Luftwaffe's losses mounted. Entire squadrons of experienced crews were destroyed, replaced by inexperienced reinforcements struggling to match British tactics and morale. By late summer, the Luftwaffe realized that the skies over Britain were not theirs to dominate. Bombing campaigns inflicted damage, yet the RAF remained intact, adapting to new strategies, rotating squadrons, and keeping the fight alive. For Hitler, the failure to break British air defenses meant the postponement and eventual cancellation of his invasion plans. The skies over England became a symbol. The Luftwaffe could strike, it could terrorize, but it could not break the spirit of a nation determined to survive. The first phase of the Battle of Britain had begun, and the fight for the skies was only escalating, a deadly duel that would decide the fate of Europe. As the summer of 1940 progressed, Britain's skies became a battlefield unlike any the world had ever seen. The Luftwaffe rained destruction from above, but the Royal Air Force, small in number yet fierce in spirit, refused to yield. Fighter Command's pilots, flying Spitfires and Hurricanes, became the first and last line of defense for their nation. Each sortie was a gamble with death, a test of skill, courage, and endurance. The men of 11, 19, and 603 squadrons knew the odds were stacked against them. They were outnumbered, outgunned in some engagements, and yet they fought with an unyielding resolve. Radar operators guided them from the ground, giving precious minutes to intercept incoming German formations. Pilots had to climb rapidly, position themselves above or behind enemy aircraft, and strike with precision, all while dodging the deadly fire of Messerschmitts and flak from below. The margin for error was razor-thin. Dogfights erupted like violent storms over Kent, Sussex, and the Channel. Hurricanes and Spitfires danced among clouds and smoke, diving, twisting, and climbing to gain the upper hand. Each kill was celebrated, each loss mourned. Pilots often flew multiple sorties in a single day, fatigue etched into their faces, adrenaline pushing them beyond human limits. Many carried personal letters from loved ones, photographs tucked into flight jackets, reminders of home and reasons to fight. Courage took many forms. Some pilots shielded comrades, diving into the path of enemy fire to save a wingman. Others flew with broken aircraft, limping back to base despite fuel shortages or damaged controls. They faced constant danger not just from enemy bullets, but from engine failures, navigation errors, and exhaustion. Yet their determination never wavered. Young men barely out of adolescence became icons of defiance, embodying the hope of an entire nation. The Luftwaffe underestimated British resolve. Every formation of bombers met fierce opposition, often suffering severe losses. Pilots like Douglas Bader, despite having prosthetic legs, became legends of RAF courage, inspiring others to rise above fear. Ground crews worked tirelessly, repairing aircraft under threat of attack, ensuring that every plane that could fly would take to the skies again. Brotherhood bound the squadrons together, camaraderie forged in the crucible of constant peril. By September, the tide of battle began to show the RAF's resilience. Despite the blitz and relentless Luftwaffe raids, Britain's fighter squadrons adapted tactics, rotated forces, and conserved pilots while maximizing defensive impact. Spitfires met bombers head-on, Hurricanes protected vital airfields, and coordination between radar stations and pilots became a lethal network of resistance. The bravery of these pilots carried the weight of an entire nation. Each dogfight, each interception, was more than a tactical maneuver, it was a fight for survival, freedom, and the hope that Britain would stand when the world seemed ready to fall. RAF pilots became living symbols of courage, their valor echoing across the skies and into history. They did not just resist, they inspired. Through their determination, skill, and sacrifice, Britain endured, proving that the spirit of a people could never be bombed into submission. The battle for the skies raged on, but it was clear, the courage of Britain's fighter pilots would define the war to come, and the Luftwaffe had met a resistance that would alter the course of history. By September 1940, the Battle of Britain had shifted from the skies to the streets and rooftops of London. The Luftwaffe, frustrated by the resilience of the RAF, unleashed a new campaign, the Blitz, a relentless series of night raids aimed at breaking the spirit of the British people. London became a city under siege, its skyline alight with fire, its streets filled with smoke, rubble, and fear. For weeks, night after night, the bombers came. Thousands of tons of explosives rained down from the skies, shaking buildings, shattering windows, and turning homes into ashes. Sirens wailed, signaling civilians to descend into the underground stations, hastily converted into air raid shelters. Families huddled together on cold benches, listening to the deafening roar above and praying they would see dawn. Children clung to their parents, frightened by the explosions that seemed to shake the very foundations of the city. The fires painted the night in oranges and reds, reflected in the Thames as if the river itself were aflame. Streets disappeared under clouds of smoke, landmarks once familiar became silhouettes against the inferno. Hospitals overflowed with the wounded, firefighters battled tirelessly to contain the blazes, and volunteers risked their lives to rescue those trapped beneath collapsed buildings. Despite the chaos, Londoners adapted. Night after night, they emerged from shelters to help neighbors, distribute food, and tend to the injured, a testament to resilience in the face of terror. The human cost was staggering. Thousands were killed or injured, entire neighborhoods reduced to rubble. Yet, in every corner of the city, stories of courage emerged. Firefighters climbed burning buildings, unafraid of the collapsing beams and the rain of bombs. Citizens formed bucket brigades, passing water hand to hand to keep flames from spreading. Volunteer ambulance drivers navigated streets filled with debris, ferrying the injured to safety under the constant threat of falling bombs. Amid the destruction, Londoners discovered an indomitable spirit. Shops reopened among the ruins, street markets operated despite rubble-strewn roads, and families rebuilt their lives while the bombs continued to fall. The Blitz, meant to terrorize and crush morale, instead strengthened a collective determination to survive, fight back, and preserve a sense of normalcy amidst the chaos. From above, the Luftwaffe observed a city that refused to bend. Firefights, searchlights, and anti-aircraft guns illuminated the night as RAF pilots continued to intercept bombers, often engaging in desperate dogfights under the fiery glow of London's burning streets. Each downed aircraft was a small victory, a reminder that Britain's defenders fought not just for air superiority, but for the people beneath them. The Blitz was not merely a military campaign, it was a test of human endurance, of courage under fire, and of communal solidarity. London citizens endured, rebuilt, and inspired the world with their defiance. By the time the raid slowed, the city had paid a heavy price, yet its spirit remained unbroken. London had burned, but it had not fallen. Through the smoke, rubble, and fear, a lesson emerged: even in the darkest nights, courage, unity, and hope could shine brighter than any firestorm. The Blitz was a city ablaze, but London's heart remained untouched, resolute, defiant, and eternal. By October 1940, the Battle of Britain had reached a critical point. The Luftwaffe, once confident in its ability to crush the Royal Air Force and pave the way for an invasion, had met an enemy far more resilient than anticipated. Hitler's strategy had relied on rapid domination of the skies, but the skies over Britain were fiercely defended by pilots whose courage, skill, and determination would rewrite the course of the war. The RAF, outnumbered yet unyielding, exploited every advantage. Radar stations along the coast provided early warning, allowing squadrons to intercept bombers before they reached their targets. Hurricanes and Spitfires tore through formations of German aircraft, often engaging in deadly dogfights that pushed pilots to the limits of endurance. Every mission was a gamble, some returned with bullet-riddled planes, others never returned at all. But each successful interception bought precious hours for civilians below and denied the Luftwaffe air superiority. Meanwhile, the Blitz continued over London and other major cities, yet even these nightly raids could not break British morale. Factories continued to produce aircraft and munitions, underground stations sheltered families, and citizens formed volunteer brigades to fight fires, clear rubble, and care for the wounded. Life persisted under the shadow of war, and with every bomb that fell, the resolve to resist only strengthened. Hitler had underestimated not just the RAF, but the determination of an entire nation. The Luftwaffe suffered mounting losses. Experienced pilots were killed or captured, aircraft were destroyed faster than they could be replaced, and the relentless pressure began to fracture German strategy. Hitler, frustrated by the failure to achieve his objectives, shifted targets to civilian areas in a desperate attempt to break morale, a tactic that backfired, galvanizing British defiance rather than undermining it. Londoners and provincial towns alike remained steadfast, their endurance a silent yet powerful counterattack. By late October, the German offensive had faltered. The Luftwaffe no longer dominated the skies, and the RAF had proven itself capable of sustained resistance. Hitler's dream of a quick victory over Britain had crumbled, marking the first major defeat for the Nazi war machine. For the first time, the momentum of the Third Reich was checked, and the myth of its invincibility was shattered. The significance of this victory extended far beyond the British Isles. By holding the line, Britain ensured that the Allied powers retained a critical base for future operations in Europe. The failure of Operation Sea Lion, Germany's planned invasion, meant that the Nazis could not consolidate control over Western Europe. It bought time for the United States to mobilize and for the Soviets to prepare for the titanic struggles that lay ahead on the Eastern Front. The courage of RAF pilots, ground crews, and civilians alike had turned the tide. Ordinary people had achieved the extraordinary through resilience, unity, and unwavering determination. They had shown the world that even in the face of overwhelming odds, spirit and strategy could triumph over sheer force. As the smoke cleared over bombed cities, the streets of London bore scars of fire and destruction, yet the heart of the nation beat stronger than ever. Hitler's first major defeat was not just a military victory, it was a testament to human courage, endurance, and the refusal to submit to tyranny. The skies over Britain had burned, but the spirit of its people had endured, marking the beginning of a turning point in World War II. The Battle of Britain proved one unassailable truth: even the mightiest storm can be weathered when courage rises to meet it. Hitler had been stopped. Europe's skies were free, for now, and the long struggle for freedom had only just begun.